statements to the fact that it doesn't matter, right? That the charter exists, that there won't be prosecutions. But could the government use the notwithstanding clause to maintain enforcement, even though we have been assured that we need not worry about this infringement because of freedoms found in the charter? And I would love to hear a comment from all three of you.
Thank you for the question, Chair. So I can speak generally to the requirements of Section 33 of the Charter, which is that a declaration, if made, must be done expressly by the legislature under this section in order to have the effect that such operation of the charter rights would not apply but for, that the declaration must be done expressly would apply for only sections 7 to 15 of the charter and would apply only for 5 years. So it's understanding that the federal government has never invoked the notwithstanding clause, but those are the requirements of form in terms of the declaration needing to be specific by the legislature.
I don't have anything to add to what my colleague Ms. Ali has said on the scope of Section 33 of the Charter. I don't know if there was another question.
So it was the same question. All witnesses, that could the notwithstanding clause be used to defend C-9 in its current form prior to the amendment from my colleague across the way if it was struck down by the court?
I think what I can say is that there's nothing in the bill as introduced that suggests that the government intended to invoke Section 33 of the Charter.
I understand that. But if this is enacted and proclaimed, and then subsequently found to be not constitutional by the court, could the government use the notwithstanding clause to maintain enforcement?
We're here to speak tonight about what is in C-9 and the impact of the amendments that are before the committee, but not to opine on what would happen, what the government might do in a situation where a law is struck down. That is not the role of a Justice Department official. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. At least I got you speaking, right? So I appreciate that. I want to close a little bit with some commentary that I've been contacted by numerous faith leaders in my riding over the previous few days. And I find it very hard to express how deeply afraid they are of where this might go and what this portends for their faith, for their traditions, and for their how the chilling effect has fallen on top of them at the beginning of the Christmas season. And so I want all members to think very deeply into their souls on what this portends. And with that, Chair, I cede my time.
Thank you. We are Mr. Jackson. Don't make me miss Larry McGuire even more than I already do.
Chair, I would never
could you
do
just
that.
read the list before we, would you mind reading the
never do
list
that.
out before we go on to the next member?
You're on the list.
But just what is the list? Can we know?
The list of us, it's a long list. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
So you're not willing to do that?
Do you really want to read who's on the list? Okay, it's Mr. Rowe, Janice, Lawton, Holman, sorry, Kurt, Goodrich, Jensen, Mantle, Brock. Does that make you feel better?
It's not about how I
Mr.
feel, Chair.
Jackson,
It's
over to you.
about being kept informed of what's happening during proceedings. Thank you for doing your job. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sure my predecessor is looking fondly on our interaction today. He may even be watching. Who knows? He is a bit of a political animal. Actually, Chair, I wanted to start with a bit of a procedural question that I have for you as I am new here. Not long ago, although a little bit of time has passed, I didn't want to interrupt my colleagues. An individual approached the table and took a picture of the proceeding here. And then he went and sat down, and I noticed someone from the Liberal staff team went up to the individual and asked him, I'm assuming asked him to delete it, although I did not hear that. That individual has now left the room. I had to Google him to find out who he is, and I believe it was John Paul Danko, who is a member of Parliament, and that individual has now left the room. It was quite obvious to me that he was holding his cell phone sideways, right here at this angle of the table. And so I just want to make sure, Chair, that you would investigate this and ensure that photo was in fact deleted. I would hate to see it on social media, and knowing that this was a member of Parliament that did it is deeply concerning, because that is against our rules. So I just wonder if you would investigate that and report back.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I wasn't aware that it is not allowed. It may have happened during the time when we were suspended, which
No.
we were suspended a number of times. Anyway, I will look into it. I'll find out about it. If it did in fact happen, I'll make sure the picture's deleted.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Secondly, I do have a copy of Mr. Lawton's amendment here, so I just want to make sure I'm going to stay as best I can on topic to that, Chair. Listen, I have been astounded by the debate since Bill C-9 was introduced, and just the general direction that the Liberal government has decided to go on this. Like, as a relatively new member of Parliament, you know, I don't speak loudly about faith often, or my faith in particular, but I certainly, you know, am a person of faith, and the outpouring of deep concern regarding this bill has been, well, I haven't seen anything quite like it since I was elected, certainly, and you know, some of the most you know, different faiths are more politically active than others, I would say, and that's okay. That's their right to certainly participate in that, in politics or in commentary on the issues of the day. But we've got a joint statement here, Chair, and I'm not sure if the committee's received it, signed by a number of multi-faith organization and civil liberties organizations. It was dated December 1st, and it is certainly calling for, you know, I could read the whole thing. We, the undersigned multi-faith civil liberties and community organizations, collectively reject Bill C-9, an act to amend the criminal code, the so-called Combating Hate Act. They further write, as Bill C-9 proceeds through the parliamentary process, we emphasize that this bill shouldn't be passed. The risks it poses to protest rights, labor rights, and public accountability are too serious and too far-reaching. Bill C-9, far from protecting communities, criminalizes protest, suppresses dissent, and expands police discretionary power at a time when over-policing, surveillance, and disproportionate targeting of racialized communities are already well documented. You know, they also, our demands, with number one, withdraw Bill C-9 in its entirety, number one. Number two, affirm the right to protest as a cornerstone of Canadian democracy. Number three, end the expansion of police powers and discretionary authority, protect communities, not institutions. And number four, commit to evidence-based approaches to addressing hate. It goes on and on for some time. It's two full pages there. I won't read the whole thing, Chair, I promise. But the reason why this really stood out to me, you know, I was raised in the United Church of Canada. Some of my fellow Christians like to call us Christian light, affectionately. Sometimes it's affectionate, sometimes it isn't, and that's okay. We take that quite well as members of the United Church in this country, based on, of course, the Methodist faith. And we don't, like, the United Church of Canada is like one of the most center-left politics, and they weigh into politics all the time as a central organization for the church, always supporting liberals, and sometimes even going further to the left of the spectrum of that. And I often have debates with people within my own church community and our faith leadership about why our church chooses to be so public about their political views and why they're always with the Liberals and not on the left. Even they, Mr. Chair, have signed this statement asking for this bill to be pulled out. Like, it's that bad that, you know, the Liberals have even managed to tick off us nice folks in the United Church. I don't understand how the Liberal Party could be so off base with this bill that they have lost their biggest advocate in the faith community, which is, in fact, the leadership of my own church. You know, part of the foundational principle of our church under John Wesley is, you know, the famous quote now made famous by Hillary Clinton, something that won't endear me to my conservative colleagues on her election campaign for president in 2016, but who could say no to Morgan Freeman's voice, is do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, for all the people you can, as long as ever you can. And yet, even the United Church is saying this is not the right path to do that, folks. You need to pull this bill back and have a sit down. Have a sit down with the Center for Free Expression, the Independent Jewish Voices, the Canadian Muslim Public Affairs Council, the Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, the Chinese Canadian National Council Toronto chapter. Like, it goes on and on. The signatories to this statement saying that this bill is an abject failure. It's a total disaster. And these are people with very different political views on every topic that matters, except for this one. Here they agree that this and their faiths are all at risk by this piece of legislation that has been made worse tonight by the Bloc Liberal Separatist Coalition. And like, I really have a hard time, I'm gonna have a really hard time going home and justifying to my constituents in rural Manitoba how this is supposed to make their life better. I really don't see it, because you've got all the experts saying that this is in fact gonna make life much worse. And, you know, I'm still not really sure what this is going to achieve. Like, I've heard from the experts. I'm filling in for Mr. Baber now. I was here before that. They've already admitted on the record that all the serious crimes that can be done and have been done are already a crime. It's already criminal to incite violence against a criminal. It's already in the criminal code to incite violence against another religious group based on their religion, as well as any other matter of factors when you're trying to incite violence against a particular group in this country. And so what exactly does this achieve? I've yet to hear an answer. You know, we had some Liberal members trying to answer questions when they, of course, didn't have to be on the record about it. I don't know, anybody want to answer that question? Like, how is this actually going to make it better than what's already illegal to do in this country? We are talking about another amendment, an amendment that's supposed to protect people, right, from the impact of this bill, which is an overreach. So I'll move on, Mr. Chair, but I am deeply concerned about that. You know, I think there are people in this country, there are a few still left, although they're getting fewer, that went, you know, in the course of a world war and in peacekeeping missions, and they fought to defend these freedoms that this country stands for and that our allies around the world stand for. Freedom to believe what you want to believe and to believe in any religion and any faith. You know, my grandfather's a Second World War veteran. He left the farm in Margaret, Manitoba, population 100, and went to fight for freedoms against hateful people. So it's not that conservatives are opposed to this bill because we're all of a sudden wanting hateful acts and hateful language to continue to get spread all over this country. Like, that's exactly the opposite of what we believe. And you know, I think the vast majority of my constituents would expect me, though, to be here standing up for their freedom to believe what they want to believe and that they and generations before us from our region have put their lives on the line to defend that, not just in this country, but around the world for religions that they didn't even know or understand at the time that they were getting on a boat and shipping over there. And so for this now, it's shocking to me that we have a group that wants to, remove these types of freedoms and protections in our society. I think Mr. Lawton has an important amendment here that really is trying to at least balance what is happening. And I think Mr. Baber and Ms. Cronus also brought important context to light when they were sharing their deep legal understanding of the law, being both practitioners of it themselves. Of course, our shadow minister, Mr. Brock, as well. These are folks that understand this deeply, and I think probably more deeply than maybe even some of the Liberal members, but I digress, Mr. Chair. I really do want to stress the fact that Manitobans understand standing up against hateful acts. We've seen challenges with, ethnic communities in Winnipeg being targeted by hateful acts, particularly with the rise of the conflict in the Middle East, hateful protests outside the Jewish Folklorama Pavilion, where people take their kids to celebrate faith. I mean, Manitobans are not strangers or isolated from these activities that are disturbingly going on in our country. We see them, but we believe that the provisions to protect Canadians from these actions already exist in Canadian statutes and in Canadian law. We have a problem with enforcement in this country, which, is a problem that stems across many different types of crimes, thanks to Liberal governments over the last 10 years. And this is just another example of a failure to enforce and prosecute existing laws that already exist. So I would encourage the Liberals to pull back on this bill, abandon their partnership with the Bloc, which shouldn't really have to be said, but apparently it does in this context, and rethink this, because I think we really need to make sure that this country, by the way, the generation that fought for these freedoms in other countries came back after the Great Wars and said, we need to solve this problem on our own. Like, we need to make sure that these things that we just went and fought a war over to protect can't happen here, which is why you got the Bill of Rights, like a colleague mentioned, and why the Charter was patriated, and it came back to Canada, and all of these provisions were added to protect the freedoms that Canadians deserve, and they were brought here onto Canadian soil and into Canadian law. I don't understand why the Liberals are trying to find a problem where none exists. We have a lot of problems facing this country, as I have learned very quickly since getting elected to the federal level. There are a lot of challenges, but the state policing the religious beliefs of its people, like, that's something that we leave to, well, other countries around the world, some of which the new Prime Minister seemingly gets along very well with and spends a lot of time flying around the world to see and discuss with, and maybe there's some commonalities there. I don't know. I'll leave that up to him to justify to his constituents in Nepean and across the rest of the country. But the fact is that those principles have no place here. They don't belong in this country. And that's why Mr. Lawton's amendment should pass, because it really does strengthen a terrible act, but it makes some improvement is in as limited a fashion as is possible, given the deeply flawed nature of the original draft. I think it's heartening to see that at least within our Conservative team, which is made up of members of Parliament from many faiths, of which many are around this table, and many of which I am proud and pleased to serve in this Parliament with, that we are at least unified in hearing from the communities that we represent, that where the Liberals are going with this, what they're proposing to do with it is wrong, and that Canadians will not stand for it. And so I appreciate, Chair, that you've mentioned that there's resources to discuss this further for the rest of the week. I think that's important because Canadians have a lot of concerns. There's a lot of usage here. I have gotten, literally, this is like the first, discussion point publicly that I've had hundreds of calls on from people from Brandon's longest religions. First Baptist Church just celebrated their 140th anniversary in the city, to members of the community who just opened the very first Gurdwara in Brandon's history just earlier this year. And unified, they are reaching out to me with deep, deep concern and fear, suggesting that this bill in fact reflects bills that came into force in countries that they purposefully fled to Canada to avoid. And now they're seeing it reflected here in the Canadian Parliament. And so to my Liberal colleagues, I will end with this and reprieve the committee of further Grant Jackson interventions for now. But well, thank you, colleagues. It's very, I appreciate it. Flattering, deeply flattering. I noticed the chair didn't join in. Maybe next time I'll try harder, Chair.
I smiled.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that very much. So, to my Liberal colleagues, I ask that, given everything that's going on in this country, for young people, for seniors, for actual criminals and actual victims of crime, can we not take a reprieve from this bill and get on with the business of locking up criminals, of bringing safety back to our streets that is not being infringed upon by preachers and other religious figures and just general people trying to get an understanding of faith? Can we not get back to dealing with real criminals, to lock people up, bring back safety to our streets? Let's put the people of this country first, do all the good we can for as many people we can, as quickly as we can. And I am sure that this committee will still be here to deal with this ridiculous bill when we have achieved some actual results to make communities safer in this country. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I'm going to suspend for 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back with Mr. Rowe.
Earlier, my comments from my colleague, Mr. Jackson, he made some very concerning comments regarding somebody potentially doing something that is very much against our rules in this committee. And so I'm just wondering, I know you are holding back on providing any kind of guidance on the point of privilege from my colleague, Mr. Jennis, but perhaps could we have an update on that? Like, this is very serious. People are not allowed to take photos of these proceedings. And so if a photo was taken, has it been deleted and deleted from the deleted file? And do we have assurances from the whip's office?
First of all, I'm not holding back on anything. I took Mr. Janis's point under advisement earlier. On the point regarding the picture, I take this very seriously, as I did then and I do now, but you know where I've been sitting since the issue was raised half an hour ago, and I have somebody looking into it, and I'll let you know as soon as I find out. So, Mr. Rowe, over to you.
Yeah, but before I get into it, I think this is a point of order as well. There was an accusation made to a Conservative colleague that he was making fun of someone's language here. It was very evident that we were, having a discussion about the merit of the conversation and the debate, and I think it was very insulting to both my colleague and Wade Chang here, who speaks better English than many people, probably than myself, right? And his perfect English, and I think it was insulting to even say that we were making fun of his English when he speaks perfect English. And I think that that kind of language is not appropriate, and those are big accusations to be made towards members at this table. And I will continue on, whether it was a point of order or not.
I take your comments very seriously, and as the point I made earlier, I take that very seriously. And if I see you or any other member in this committee, whether it's on your side or the Liberal side, I will address it. I saw what I saw. We can review the tapes. Let's move on. I understand your point. Thank you.
Okay, but point of order, Mr. Chair. The question of whether this photo does or does not exist, whether it has or has not been, we just got back from being gavelled. I am very concerned. This allegation was brought up at least 15, 20 minutes ago. You're telling me that no one from the Liberal Whip's office
I'm telling
has
you
been
that
able
it's being
to
investigated.
get
I've been sitting in this chair.
the
I went to
information
the
and get it
bathroom on
back
the
to you.
break. I will give you an answer as soon as I have one. I have more than one person looking into it. Raising the point over and over again isn't going to accelerate the process. Mr. Rowe, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been the last few hours and few days trying to get words to paper on this issue, and it has been challenging because it's so frustrating. My leads and my pencil keep breaking. And there's this, it's so frustrating because you've got to ask yourself why. You know, as my friend Grant Jackson mentioned, our ancestors fought for freedom of religion. They went overseas and they fought. They were in the trenches, shoulder to shoulder fighting. And it was alluded by some members of the Liberal caucus that we may be here during Christmas and over the holidays. And I think they said it sarcastically, maybe they never. But, you know, if that's what it takes to make sure that we're fighting for freedom of religion, I know I'll be here. And I'm willing to bet there's going to be 3 or 4 or half a dozen, and maybe even dozens of Conservatives that will be here shoulder to shoulder with me, because it's the least we can do out of respect of our ancestors, out of respect for all Canadians and all people in the world who fought for freedom of religion, and we will continue to do that. And I know I will be here come hell or high water. You know, it's very strange. I'm not here to argue, although my passion may seem that. I'm here to try to bring some reason. When C-9 was introduced, I would ask myself, what's the purpose of this bill? It almost, it's everything that the bill tried to do, current laws could already do. So it was very interesting. And it almost makes me wonder if this whole amendment backroom deal with the bloc was the actual intent to actually confuse Canadians so that they wouldn't understand that what the amendment was, because the amendment wasn't released until later. And a lot of times things like this happen amongst confusion, and it's very difficult. So I'm hoping that we can make some clarifications and things, and I think we've made some clarifications tonight. And you may say, Jonathan, no, things are very clear. But we've got a situation where the PMO, Prime Minister's office, said that the committee went rogue and made a backroom deal with the bloc and gave Mark Miller, but yet they gave Mark Miller a promotion after saying the outrageous thing that the verse in the Bible should be considered hate speech. I mean, he alluded that he believes there are certain verses that could never be used in good faith. So after that comment was made, they promoted him to be a cabinet minister. How is that? How is that not in line? You would not promote someone that went rogue. So I find it very hard to believe that this was against the PMO's wishes. And then what we see here tonight is that block amendment was actually voted on. So if it was a rogue agreement against the PMO, why was it voted on yesterday? And to me, that shows the need of Mr. Lawton's amendment to make sure that religion of freedom is protected. And it's very, very important that that is. So I made a video and put it on my social media a while ago, sounding the alarm on C-9 and the block amendment. And what was interesting was there was very much confusion and people saying, well, Jonathan, you're spreading conspiracies, you're spreading misinformation. And I'm thinking, gee, I wonder, am I? And I looked in the mirror and I had a hard conversation with myself. Maybe I'm in the conservative echo chamber. Maybe I'm on Parliament Hill every day and hearing, the circle of echo chamber. But then I see that we have 23 news articles. And pretty well every one of them is against C-9 in one way or the other, or raising alerts about C-9. So I don't think I'm in the echo chamber. And then I did manage to get this on paper, and I want to read it out. There are so many groups in Canada, the same groups that this bill C-9 and the amendment, they say it's a Trojan horse. Oh, this bill is going to protect these groups, going to protect religious groups. The same religious groups that says it's going to protect are the ones coming out against it. I mean, we have a broad nationwide coalition of religious, civil liberties, labor, and community organizations have mobilized against C-9. And the proposed removal of the religious text exemption among faith groups, dozens of Catholics, dioceses, and parishes, led by the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, have issued coordinated calls to action joined by multiple Jewish and Sikh advocacy groups, and by 40-plus Muslim and Palestinian community organizations in joint statements, warning of threats to religious freedom and civil liberties. Multi-faith networks have also weighed in, with a cross-country coalition of more than 20 Christian, Muslim, Jewish, and secular justice organizations signing a unified appeal to halt the bill. Civil society opposition is equally extensive. A 37-organization civil liberties and legal coalition led by the BC Civil Liberties Association has condemned C-9 as a threat to protect rights, academic freedom, and due process, while national labor bodies, including major public sector unions, have warned that the bill will criminalize legitimate worker and community demonstrations. So it's just mind-blowing that this is not just conservatives waving the, blowing the horn. This is the whole country is speaking out. And I would not want to, I don't know how you can get here in this committee and say that there's no need for Andrew Lawton's bill, for amendment to this bill. And then we see that they're talking two sides of the mouth. Oh, well, we don't need this. It's okay because it's protected under Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Well, if that's the case, if religion of freedom is protected by Charter of Freedom, why not have Andrew Lawton's bill introduced? And why take out the religious exemption to begin with? So I will leave it there for today. Maybe I'll come back another day and express some more concerns. But thank you very much, Chair, for having me.
All right, thank you. Back to Mr. Janis.
Well, thank you, Chair. I do have a lot that I want to say on this subject, but I'm also so encouraged by the fact that we have 14 Conservative MPs that are here. It's after 10 o'clock here in Ottawa, and we have a committee needs 4 Conservatives at any given time. And I count around the table 14 Conservative MPs that have come out to fight for freedom of speech and freedom of religion. And I want to encourage folks at home that there are so many Conservatives, far more than need to be here, that want to be here to fight for your rights and your freedoms and to oppose this attack on religious liberty. So I've already spoken a bit tonight. I'm going to cede my time now because I want to hear what so many of these other great folks around the table have to say. But Chair, I'll ask you to re-add me to the list at the bottom. And also, if you can, before we go to the next member, give us an update on your deliberations on how the Justice Minister violated the privileges of this committee by leaking confidential information and when you plan to make a decision on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Janis. Okay, who we have? Mr. Lawton. Sorry, I couldn't read the writing.
I think members of this committee will know that I think freedom of religion and freedom of expression are incredibly important issues. And I've said on the record, and I will say again, that Conservatives will stand firm and defend these fundamental liberties for as long as it takes. But I want to reiterate, in the interest of working across party lines, in the interest of collaboration, that we would much rather focus on issues that are not so divisive and toxic and, quite frankly, unconstitutional. We would love nothing more than to not have to debate my amendment to Bill C-9, that a specific carve-out is needed defending freedom of expression and freedom of religion. So at this time, I move to proceed to clause by clause, or move to consideration of Bill C-14, so this committee can do work that is far more relevant to Canadians in fixing the broken Liberal bail system.
Okay. What's the motion again, Mr. Lawton? Sorry.
That we proceed to consideration of Bill C-14, the bail legislation.
It's a dilatory motion, so yes. Over to you.
Ms. Latanzio? I'd like to continue on C9, so my vote is no.
Mr. Chang?
No.
Madame Dillon? No. Mr. Housefather?
No.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Who's he here for?
He's here for Baber.
He's here for-
Mr. Brock?
This is exactly what Canadians want. My vote is absolutely yes.
Mr. Gill?
I would say strong yes to this because C-14 is very important and this is what we need to do at this point.
Mr. Lawton?
We need to fix the bail system. I vote yes.
Monsieur Fortin?
No. Okay, so Mr. Lawton, thank you. So we're now on to Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to just say I speak here in honor on behalf of the people of London Fanshawe, but also for all Canadians, as attacks on freedoms is detriment to the democracy we live in as we speak. When there is concerns with regards to the freedom of religion and freedom of expression on the table, I, like my Conservative colleagues, will stand up shoulder to shoulder to defend the freedoms that all of our Canadians do not take for granted, but we do take it as part of the day-to-day process of being Canadians. With regards about myself, yes, I was recently elected as Member of Parliament for London Fanshawe back in April of this year, 2025. But I come from a small town of Forest, Ontario, in between London, Ontario, and Sarnia, and it is a population of 2,800. Forest is famous for being the oldest running movie theater in the world. It was opened in 1917, just before the age of the talkies, and the reason I bring up the opening age of 1917 is yes, it was Canada then, and we had the freedom of religion. Fast forward to 2025, and now there's concerns at this committee where we will lose freedom of aspects of freedom of religion and also freedom of expression. On top of that, growing in a small town, I went to an elementary school, a Catholic elementary school, where yes, it was a Catholic elementary school, but we did learn the various religions that are in modern Canadian culture even to today. Various Christian religions, Catholicism, baptism, Anglicanism, the United Church that my fellow colleague MP Jackson mentioned. There's also religions of Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Buddhists, et cetera, et cetera. And now we stand here at this committee with concerns about those religious freedoms. And that is why I'm speaking here with the concern regarding Bill C-9 and the block amendment of BQ3 and the attack of freedom of religion and freedom of expression. The concern that people of faith could be imprisoned for expressing deeply held religious beliefs that the government finds offensive. What the government may find offensive is so vague, it is alarming. That's it. Just whatever the government may find offensive. And so on that note, there's a few items that stand out. Though some may find these beliefs objectionable, old-fashioned, or even hateful, a free country does not criminalize the expression of sincerely held religious doctrines. 2, we debate. As a civil democracy, we debate people we disagree with, not silence or attest them. 3, the courts have been clear that violence and calls to violence are not and never have been protected as free expression and are not in good faith as the defense requires. And 4, this change will expose people of faith to criminal prosecution for the simple act of quoting their own sacred text in person, in public, or online. I also want to share some testimony quotes that was shared with the committee. First of all, from Derek Ross, Executive Director of Christian Legal Fellowship. And he says, quote, "The courts have been very clear that one cannot simply embed a hateful message in a so-called prayer and expect to receive the benefit of that defense. The courts have specifically said that it is not permitted." Second quote from Noah Shack, Chief Executive Officer, Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. "I'll just say that the jurisprudence is clear that the religion defense cannot be used as a Trojan horse to allow otherwise hateful speech to come through." And another statement on regards of Imam Adil Chakari. "He committed at least 2 offenses. There's the willful promotion of hatred against an identifiable group, and he has also committed the offense of inciting hatred against an identifiable group likely to lead to a breach of the peace. I heard the position was taken that he was expressing a view on a religious subject. That's nonsense. The defense would not be available to him. It wasn't made in good faith, and it was simply the willful promotion of hatred." That quote comes from Mark Sandler, one of Canada's most respected and prominent criminal lawyers. So additionally on that note, inciting violence from one person to another group or another person is already embedded in the criminal code, not protected by freedom of religion. So with regard to this bill of C-9, why are we even here tonight? What is the point of this bill when the aspects that we're debating about is already part of the criminal code? And I also want to add, I've received many letters from my constituents in London Fanshawe, and I want to share one of the letters that was emailed to me. It was from a gentleman named Paul. It says, "Bill C-9 represents an unacceptable assault on free expression in Canada. This bill would give the government the power to criminally prosecute Canadians for their opinions, lower the bar of what legally constitutes hate, quote unquote, and strip away vital safeguards that keep authorities from weaponizing laws against dissidents. It risks turning controversial memes into crimes and silencing open debate through fear of prosecution. As a constituent, I urge you to take a clear stand for freedom of expression and do everything in your power to stop Bill C-9 from becoming law." And to Paul, again, I am here at the Justice Committee. I'm agreeing with you that we have to defend the freedom of religion and we have to defend the freedom of expression. We as in my conservative colleagues standing up for these freedoms. And as I close, another concern I have is the Liberals and the Bloc going down a slippery slope, slowly taking away these freedoms. And I have to ask, what's next? It is December. It is the holiday season. Should we be concerned that the role of singing traditional Christmas songs, will that be viewed as hatred? Like, for example, the songs that we hear every year, such as "O Holy Night," "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," "All Come All Ye Faithful." And I'm not talking about just Christian songs. Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song, which has been around for 30 years now. If I sing that, do I have to fear of being prosecuted, going to jail, going to prison? So I just want to end on saying I applaud my colleague, MP Lawton, for his amendment, and I'll say the amendment, quote the amendment, for section 6.1, nothing in this section is to be interpreted or applied so as to interfere with the freedom of expression or the freedom of religion, as myself and my fellow conservative colleagues are protecting as we sit here tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Okay, Ms. Jansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must say I am disappointed that I have to be here to speak to the need for religious freedom protection. But I'm very thankful to my colleague, Mr. Lawton, for the amendment that he's put forward to actually protect that freedom of religious expression. There are days in Ottawa when the bills we debate come and go, barely remembered by the time we leave the committee room. And then there are days like today, days when the very soul of our country is at issue. Because what we're really dealing with right now is not a technical adjustment or a procedural tweak or a footnote in the justice system. What we're debating is whether Canadians should be free to speak from their conscience or whether that freedom can be stripped away because a government of the day finds those beliefs uncomfortable. Today's one of those moments that will be remembered long after the politics of the day have faded. A future generation will ask us what we did when they are going to ask us what we did when the freedom to speak one's faith was put at risk. Incredibly, the Liberals and the Bloc have struck a deal to remove key safeguards in the criminal code, safeguards that protect Canadians who speak in good faith about their religious beliefs. Safeguards the Supreme Court of Canada has already said are necessary to keep our hate speech laws constitutional. Necessary, not optional. After the amendment supported by the Liberals and the Bloc passed, we're now in a situation where key safeguards in the criminal code have been stripped away. Safeguards that protected Canadians of faith. Those protections existed for a simple reason, because people of faith in this country hold deep, sincere beliefs about morality, about human nature, about right and wrong. And some Canadians agree with those beliefs, while others disagree. But in a free society, we debate ideas. We don't jail people for them. With the earlier amendment now adopted, the risk is real that people could be investigated and prosecuted, even face up to 2 years in prison, for simply quoting a verse from the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Guru Granth Sahib, the Vedas, or the teachings of Buddha. In other words, quoting the very scriptures that shaped their lives. Mr. Chair, this is not the Canada our grandparents built. This is not the Canada my family came to from the Netherlands after World War II, or the Canada generations of immigrants chose as their home because this country promised something rare in the world, freedom of conscience and freedom from religious violence. That's why Mr. Lawton's amendment is so important. His proposal would add a new subsection 6.1, making it clear that nothing in this section is to be interpreted or applied so as to interfere with the freedom of expression or the freedom of religion. This amendment doesn't undo all the damage of the previous change, but it does put a clear statutory road sign in front of prosecutors, judges, and police. When you apply this section, you must not trample freedom of expression and freedom of religion. It's a line in the sand that says, on the face of the law itself, that these charter rights still matter. Now, the Bloc and the Liberals have justified their earlier amendment by pointing to the case of the Montreal imam. In 2023, he prayed for the extermination of Jews. What he said was vile, anti-Semitic, and hateful. And it was already illegal. There's no religious defense for advocating genocide, and there is no religious defense for public incitement of hatred. The authorities could have charged him, should have charged him, and they failed to enforce the law. And that failure is now being used as an excuse to criminalize ordinary Canadians who simply express their faith sincerely. You don't fix one injustice by creating another. We're now left to mitigate the damage. Mr. Lawton's amendment is one of the only tools left to this committee to send a clear message that Parliament does not intend this section to be used to interfere with core freedoms. I want people to picture something for a moment. Imagine a mother standing at a school board meeting, reading a passage from her holy book, trying to explain a belief that her family has lived by for generations. Imagine a priest or a rabbi or an imam preaching a sermon drawn from their ancient texts. Imagine a Sikh leader explaining a teaching that's over 500 years old. Imagine a Hindu teacher quoting the Bhagavad Gita, sorry. Imagine a Buddhist sharing the words of a sutra. In the wake of the amendment that's just passed, those Canadians are now looking to see whether Parliament will offer any reassurance, any guardrail at all, that they will not be treated as criminals for speaking from their own scriptures. This is what this amendment does. It doesn't solve every problem, but it tells them this section is not supposed to be used to interfere with your freedom of expression or your freedom of religion. What troubles me even more, Mr. Chair, is what was said in this very committee last week. The Liberal chair, Mark Miller, looked at scriptures cherished by billions of people, the Bible, the Torah, and said there is clear hatred in them. He singled out Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Romans, and then he said prosecutors should be able to press charges when Canadians quote those books. Think about that. A senior Liberal in charge of shaping our laws believes quoting scripture should be grounds for criminal prosecution. If you want to understand why we need Mr. Lawton's amendment, it's exactly because those are the kinds of views that will guide how this law is interpreted. Without some explicit protection, we move toward a country where the government decides which verses from the Bible are acceptable, where the state chooses which teachings of the Quran may be spoken aloud, where prosecutors decide which parts of a sermon are safe and which are hate. Mr. Chair, when the state starts policing scripture, it's no longer protecting citizens, it's controlling them. We already see this pattern across the country. In Ontario and elsewhere, doctors with religious objections to euthanasia have effectively been told, violate your beliefs or leave medicine. In Quebec, the government has already banned many public employees from wearing religious symbols. Now they try to restrict public prayer in parks, revoking accreditation from religious schools, scrub religious symbols from communications. They say it's neutral, but neutrality that bans faith is not neutrality at all. It's state-imposed secularism. There's an old Dutch statesman and thinker named Abraham Kuyper who wrestled with this exact problem more than a century ago. How a diverse society protects freedoms when people don't all believe the same things. Kuyper would tell us something very uncomfortable for modern governments. There's no such thing as neutral regulation of speech. When the state claims neutrality, but quietly decides which beliefs are acceptable to express, it's not neutral at all. It's picking a side. Secularism, for all its polite language, is not an umpire. It's a worldview like any other. And when the state permits every ideology under the sun, political, cultural, even extreme, but suddenly tightens the rules when speech is rooted in faith, the problem isn't religion. The problem is honesty. A society that allows every belief except religious belief to speak freely is not pluralistic. It's selective, and it's pretending otherwise. True pluralism doesn't protect only comfortable speech or carefully edited convictions. It protects speech that's real, lived, sometimes unpopular, speech that actually costs something to say. That's the whole point of freedom of expression. And that's why we should all be cautious, very cautious, about vague hate speech laws that are untethered from objective harm. Because when freedom depends on saying the right things, it isn't freedom anymore. A government confident in a pluralistic society should not fear religious voices. It should trust Canadians enough to hear them and strong enough to govern them without silencing them. Here in this Parliament, instead of resisting that trend to prohibit free speech, the earlier amendment raced to meet it. Mr. Lawton's amendment is, at the very least, a way for this committee to say, we've gone too far. And we need to reaffirm in black and white that freedom of expression and freedom of religion still matters in this section. Let me say with the deepest conviction, when a government declares that faith must retreat behind closed doors, it shackles the soul of its own people. Imposed secularism is not neutrality. It is the state asserting its own creed, insisting that the wisdom of our past, our ancient writers, must change, allowing a single arrogant generation, which is a tiny slice of history of the world, to impose its small ideas on the past, present, and future of mankind. We ignore our ancestors' wisdom at our peril. History teaches us a hard truth. Time and again, we see that oppression comes dressed in the language of progress, safety, and uniformity. But beneath that language lies a quiet demand that the principles of the individual must bow down. It is the cold hand of power reaching into the conscience and soul of citizens, demanding obedience. And once that line is crossed, the state does not stop. It grows bolder. And a people who once spoke freely begin to whisper instead. When coercion enters the public square dressed as tolerance, we must speak with courage and clarity. Mr. Chair, witness after witness have told this committee that the good faith religious defense was narrow. It didn't protect extremists. It didn't protect violence. It didn't protect hatred. It simply protected sincere people of faith who speak honestly from their traditions. That fence has now been removed. The least we can do is build another safeguard, an interpretive safeguard that tells courts and prosecutors not to use this section to interfere with fundamental freedoms. I want my colleagues to understand this. Freedom of religion is not a niche freedom. It's not a private hobby. It's not something you do only in your home or your place of worship. For millions, it's the framework of their life. It's their moral compass. It's their sacred duty. It's the source of courage, forgiveness, charity, perseverance, hope. This safeguard has existed in law for decades. It's not some Harper-era carve-out. A Liberal-era parliament under Chrétien chose to expand, not shrink, the ability of people of faith to express good faith opinions based on their scriptures. Successive governments, including the current prime ministers, left that safeguard in place for 2 decades. No federal government, Liberal or Conservative, moved to repeal it until now. For the first time, a government is now not just enforcing hate speech laws in case of genuine extremism. It's stripping away the explicit protection for good faith expression rooted in religious texts in the criminal code's hate propaganda provision. This is a major shift. And if we're going to do something that serious, the very least we can do is adopt Mr. Lawton's amendment to signal that Parliament does not intend this section to be used to trample freedom of religion and expression. So, Chair, for all of these reasons, I support Mr. Lawton's amendment. It's not everything we wanted, but it's an important line of defense left to this committee. I would urge colleagues, whatever your party, whatever your ideology, whatever your personal beliefs, to ask yourselves a simple question. Do I want to live in a country where this section can be interpreted in a way that interferes with freedom of expression and freedom of religion? Or do I want the law itself to say that it must not be interpreted that way? If the answer is that you value those freedoms, then I would respectfully urge you to vote in favor of Mr. Lawton's amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jansen. Okay, now over to Mr. Mantle, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to Mr. Lawton's amendment. I want to begin by saying, I come to this committee, and I think most come to this committee this evening with a shared goal of combating hate acts and acts that propagate or normalize hatred. I think that is a laudable goal. I think that is a goal that is shared by all parliamentarians, regardless of political stripe. But unfortunately, the amendment that was passed to Bill C-9, which Mr. Lawton's amendment seeks to undo rightfully, the Bloc and Liberal amendment doesn't do that. And that's why we need Mr. Lawton's amendment to bring us back to safety. I came to Parliament, Mr. Chair, for many reasons. Of course, to represent my constituents and residents in the riding of York-Durham, but also to defend the liberty of Canadians, of all Canadians across the country. And I'm glad that I did, because I have seen time and time again a pattern of anti-religious and anti-Christian bigotry from this government. And they may call themselves new, but they are just like the old anti-Christian bigoted government. Hear, hear. Whether it was a values test to receive summer jobs grants, whether it was this amendment to remove an integral part of our hate speech and anti-hate framework, whether it was to seek to remove the charitable status of religious organizations. Time and again, when given the opportunity, the Liberal government chooses anti-Christian and anti-religious bigotry. And so I'm glad that I'm here to defend the liberty of all Canadians to express their faith and their sincerely held religious beliefs. And that's exactly why the protection of the defense in Section 319 of the Code is needed to protect and defend Canadians from the type of attacks that we have seen from the Liberal government. And it has been described as a defense, Mr. Chair, and it certainly is listed as that in the Code. But I think there's another way to review or look at this provision, and it's an integral part of our entire anti-hate framework. It's not just a defense. It's not just a defense because the idea that we circumscribe the freedom of expression, the fundamental freedom of expression, I'll remind members that it's in the Charter, it's listed as a fundamental freedom, and we should give effect to that, and we don't. To curtail those freedoms requires careful balance. And the inclusion of this defense is an integral part of that. And the inclusion of it was a powerful signal by Parliament to Canadians and to the courts that the expression of sincerely held religious beliefs, including those based on a religious text, should not be subject to criminal sanction. And so it is equally a powerful signal, Mr. Chair, when Parliament decides, or as the Liberals and the bloc members have decided, to remove that protection. That sends a signal to Canadians and to the courts that that protection is no longer afforded to people who express those beliefs. And when Parliament acts through legislation, courts are required to give that effect. That's a basic premise of understanding and interpreting our law. So for the Liberals to suggest that this doesn't mean anything and with freedom of religion is already protected, as the minister did in his letter before this committee tonight, is fanciful, wrong, ignorant, and is frankly unfortunate that the Minister of Justice would hold such view. Now, there have been accusations by the Liberal members of hate against Conservatives. I see it all the time in the House. And now we see the Liberals and the Blocs going to remove protections from those who express religious beliefs. And so I wonder if accusations of hate can now be prosecuted if we are coming vanishingly close to the idea of prosecution for a difference in political belief and religious belief by one party over against another. And I want to say, Mr. Chair, that I and my Conservative colleagues will defend Canadians' freedoms to debate, to challenge, to criticize, without fear of sanction or censure by Liberals, by Bloc members, or by anyone else in Canada, their freedom to express their sincerely held religious beliefs, including from their sincerely held religious beliefs derived from a religious text. And so as long as I have to sit here, Mr. Chair, for as many nights and as many hours as you wish to hold up your own agenda with this bill, I will be right here defending Canadians' liberties. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Okay, Mr. Brock, back to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is my third intervention of the night. And I want to share a personal story in this intervention. I think a few colleagues have probably heard this before, but I don't know if my Liberal colleagues have, or whether my Bloc colleague has heard this. But I really enjoyed my time as a Crown prosecutor. But I was seeing things in my small community that upon reflection was happening in communities right across the country. And I saw firsthand, post-2015, the ever-increasing crime levels. There was a point in my career where my city of Brantford, the largest city in my riding, approximate population of about 115,000, hadn't had one homicide on its books in about 5 years. It was something that we were very proud of as a community. But what I saw was the ever-increasing tide of organized crime moving from the GTA to southwestern Ontario. And before you knew it, we saw an increase in drugs, we saw an increase in weapons, we saw an increase in human trafficking, an increase in violent stabbings and shootings. And before you know it, homicides were on the rise. When I left the Crown's office in 2021, we had 12 homicides on the books, of which I had carriage of 4 as the senior Crown attorney in that office. But I came to the conclusion that I was muted as an Ontario public servant in terms of advocating for change. I knew what was wrong, and I don't want to get into those issues because those issues are going to be properly dealt with whenever we get to the study on C-14, but possibly tomorrow. But bad Liberal policies and bad Liberal laws I saw firsthand. And I said, if I'm going to be an instrument of change, I'm going to have to do it as a legislator. I couldn't do it as a public servant for the province of Ontario. So I left. And it has been my #1 mandate since my election in September of 2021 to be that instrument of change. And I have been advocating strongly for 4+ years, pushing the government, recommending to the government, actually sitting down with the new justice minister, literally within days post-election after a return in the spring, sat down with him for close to an hour and a half, gave him a laundry list of ideas that could immediately improve community safety across this country. I said, steal my ideas, take it, call it your own. I don't care. As I said earlier, I'm going to repeat it again, community safety ought not to be a partisan issue. But never did I think, as I've been singularly focused on community safety, never did I think, as a proud Christian, as a proud Catholic, never did I think I would have to defend my faith in the people's house, in a G7 country. But that's what I'm forced to do today. And I'm absolutely proud and honored to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of my colleagues here today, a collection of veterans, a collection of my colleague Melissa Lantzman and I were elected in 2021, but a lot of new members who are stepping up and will continue to step up to fight for freedom of expression and freedom of religion. I think if one thing can be said right now to the Liberal bench is that we will never give up. We will be relentless. I will sit till Christmas Eve if we have to, if resources are available. I will sit between Christmas and New Year's Eve. I will sit post January 1st, 2026, and we will continue to fight for Canadians' right to practice, to preach without fear of this Liberal government's intrusion. I had the honor, since the announcement of this secretive deal being brokered last weekend, I had the honor of attending a Catholic Mass this morning, and it was an invitation by my colleague Garnet Genuis. It was held in the Father O'Sullivan Chapel in East Block. It was to commemorate the celebration of Juan Diego. Juan Diego is remembered as the first Indigenous saint of the Americas. The appearance of the image of the Virgin of Guadalupe on his cloak in the 1500s astonished the Aztec people and has inspired centuries of scientific study of the time. The image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, today honored in Mexico City. As I sat there, I was pondering the homily given by the Father, the priest. I listened to scripture read by a lay person. I looked around. Not only did I see conservative colleagues, but I saw Liberal colleagues. And instead of being inspired by the word of the Lord, the first thought that came across my mind is, did that priest say anything that could be deemed to be offensive, that could somehow now attract criminal prosecution? And the reason I said that is because, you know, our Minister of Heritage and Culture, who did a disastrous job with our immigration file, had been promoted to the front bench, notwithstanding his vile, extremely offensive comments to any Christian in this country, to determine that various books in the Bible are deemed, in his words, to be offensive and worthy of prosecution. I was deeply offended by that. So, to echo the words of my colleague, Mr. Lawton, you know, we can continue this. We are not going to give up. I think the Liberal bench should know that by now. But what we can do as a committee is do something collaboratively and something that Canada has been asking for close to a decade. Something that I have championed over the last 4 years. So with that in mind, Mr. Chair, I am resurrecting my motion to prioritize the consideration of Bill C-14, the Bail and Sentencing Reform Act, and work together to report the bill to the House at the earliest opportunity, and I'm seeking unanimous consent at this time. And I just heard a no from the Liberal member, Anthony Housefather.
Thank you, Mr. Brock.
That says everything that we need to know, that they do not prioritize, have never
right,
prioritized
thank you, Mr.
community safety. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Housefather.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mr., are you done? Okay, okay, okay. All right. Enough. Ms. Lansman, you have the floor.
I'll take my time on the floor if the Liberal members opposite stop obstructing the
And your colleague to
committee.
your left. It's happening on both sides, to be fair. So.
The obstruction on the committee, frankly, of studying and of looking at the Liberal bail system, which we have talked about over and over tonight, as not seen as a priority. In fact, it's odd to me that Liberals would stand in the House and talk about the obstruction of their own Liberal bail laws while obstructing their own legislation at committee by prioritizing what we learned last week, and we'll start from the beginning. We learned last week as a secret deal between the Liberals and the Bloc to eliminate the obvious safeguards that we've had in this country for a number of years, for a number of decades on the expression of religious freedom. And when you come to Parliament, I think if you grew up in a background like I think many of us grew up in communities, I was raised by my community and indeed my family who moved to this country, frankly, so they didn't have to practice religion behind a curtain, like candles under floorboards, which is both dangerous, but obviously what they would have had to do in the Soviet Union, to be able to practice freely. And I'll have to say, over the better part of the last 2.5 years, we've seen, particularly in the community that I represent, that I come from, an explosion of anti-Semitism. We've seen gunshots into schools. We've seen fire bombings into businesses, protests on a weekly basis in residential neighborhoods. And this is what this is predicated on trying to solve. The problem is that C-9 doesn't do any of that, and it wouldn't stop any of that. And it is sad that trying to convince a community coming in at the 11th hour, remember when Bill C-9 was introduced, it was a day after the government recognized
a Palestinian state. That's exactly why C-9 got to an announcement when it did, which is shameful in its own right, to try to distract from the absolute vitriolic relationship that this government has created with the Jewish community and a longstanding Democratic ally. That's why C-9 was introduced. But particularly on this amendment, there is no reason why anybody should come here and fight on behalf of their community. Fight the scourge of anti-Semitism in the community, fight what's going on in the streets, fight what's going on in the schools, in our universities, in every institution, in labor unions, in our university faculty clubs, in police forces themselves now, if you don't do it on the basis of something that you believe. And taking away the right to believe that, I think, is a very, very big problem in the country. And I don't think that anybody would fight the fight that our party, that our leader, that I've been fighting for the better part of 2 years, if they didn't do it from a place of deep religious belief. Because this isn't about a state or a conflict on the other side of the world. It is rooted in the value of Torah and religious scripture, not necessarily if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Hindu, if you're Sikh. If you're not fighting for the things that you believe in, and if you're not fighting on the basis of that, and you're not fighting to protect it, then there's no point of doing any of this at all. And that's why I think Mr. Lawton's amendment is important. What I don't understand is how it could be interpreted as anything other than the protection of freedom. Anything other than the protection of freedom to believe what you want to believe. Because none of what has been expressed by either the Bloc or frankly the Liberals now who have aligned themselves with the Bloc, who used to stand up against this stuff, none of this would have been, none of what they have said would be prosecuted would actually have been prosecuted. Like this was already against the law. And we see in communities over and over again, every weekend after every weekend, and I'm oftentimes the only one to stand up and denounce it. And at great peril. And it's because fundamentally I believe that you should be able to practice your religion in this country. You should be able to hear your religion preached. You should be able to teach it in school because it is a fundamental value of why we fight for the things that we fight for. I'll tell you, my background is not dissimilar to the background of so many other Canadians. My parents came here from the former Soviet Union. My father was an uncredentialed engineer. He drove a taxi, put my mom through school. And in one generation, you go from the front seat of a taxi to the front row of Parliament Hill. That can only happen here. And one of the fundamental reasons they moved here is so that they can be who they wanted to be, practice the religion that they wanted to practice out in the open. So they weren't subjugated into a corner where Jews, frankly, in the Soviet Union were subjugated to punishment or frankly much worse throughout history. They came here for one of those freedoms. They came here to be able to raise their children the way they wanted to be able to stand up for what they believed in and to be able to have that protected in law. And to watch the party that once believed in all of those things too line up with the Bloc and put all of that in jeopardy, you have to wonder if saying anything at all against hate in this country is ever going to be worth it with members opposite in this committee. We've said these things, we've defended communities at great peril to our own safety, to the safety of our families, and I think all of that is worth it. And I think all of that is worth it, predicated on the fact that you would be protecting the fundamental freedom to believe what you want to believe in this country. And I don't have to believe what everybody else believes, and nobody has to believe what I believe, but I should believe in the right to protect it, because without that, we lose it all here. Mr. Chair, I think that Mr. Lawton's amendment on this is critical. And it is critical to send a message to all Canadians who have faith, those, frankly, who don't, to tell the world, to tell the rest of the G7, the G20, if you will, that this is a country based on the rule of law, democracy, freedom, the values that we used to hold as shared values. And I wouldn't want to think that the last 2 years of advocacy on behalf of any community, whether it's the community that I come from or any other one that I have stood up for and fought for, would be in jeopardy because the Liberals want to make a deal with the Bloc. I can't imagine that anybody who has stood up for their community could support such an amendment, would support making a deal to eliminate any of the safeguards of something that is the critical center of the way in which many of us were raised, in the way in which many of us live in our communities, interact with our communities. If the thought that you have ever going in to a place of worship is what that person is saying, what the clergy at the front of the room saying, criminal or not, I think we have a big, big problem in this country. And we will sit here day after day and hour after hour. And I have spoken to 50 rabbis today, and I will speak to 50 more before tomorrow is over. And they too will express their concern on this. They too will express the same concerns that all clergy in this country will express on this piece of legislation, or on this amendment, frankly. We haven't even gotten to sort of how it all started in the rest of Bill C-9. But to all of those watching, particularly in the Jewish community, if you think this legislation will protect you, it will not. It will be used against you. It will be used, the very same people who purport to protect the community will use this legislation against you. It happened on Bill C-63, and they were wrong on that. You cannot have freedom in this country when you curtail freedom. You cannot have safety and security for a community if you're going to pick and choose which verses out of which books you're going to defend. And I will not stop sitting here, not a single hour of a single day. My life has changed over the last number of years, and it's for standing up for a community, and a community that I believe in. And there is no chance that being under 24-hour RCMP protection is ever not going to be worth it. I will continue to say the things out loud that many of my colleagues and many in government and far too close to government do not have the courage to say. And I will never be silenced from saying it, not by this amendment and not by any piece of legislation that we will ever allow to come through this House. So with that, Mr. Chair, I am happy to have other colleagues who have come here, who have canceled all of their plans, and I'm sure are happy to cancel all of the rest. And for those who can't do this on Christmas Eve, I am happy to fill that role. I can do it on Christmas Day. I can do it every other single day of the week, and I'm happy to sit in for my colleagues who have stood up for me when this government did not. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to cede my time to many of the other Conservative members that are here fighting for your rights.
You're here.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Okay, we have Mr. Jenis again, and then Mr. Viersen.
All right, Chair. I think I'm going to be brief again and go to the bottom of the list because I know Mr. Viersen is eager to get in on this. And I was going to preempt his comments by discussing how the investiture crisis was more important for the development of notions of separation of church and state than the Reformation was. And I know he would be interested in that. But I'll pick up on that later on. So if you can add me to the list again right after you update the committee on how you're planning and when you're planning on ruling on the Minister of Justice's violations of the privileges of this committee by leaking documents that were clearly the property of the committee. So if you can provide an update to the committee on when you're going to rule on the Justice Minister violating the privileges of this committee. And after that, I look forward to hearing from Mr. Viersen and then following up once it becomes my turn again.
I'm going to ask Mr. Lawrence to get a pen and paper and write down, it's under advisement, so every time Mr. Jenis speaks, you can just slide it in front of him for the rest of the evening. Thank you. Mr. Viersen, we're pleased to have you at the Justice Committee. I've been a member of this committee for some time, and we've been anxiously waiting you to appear. In fact, we're trying to get you to come here last year for your own private member's bill, which was the last time the Conservatives filibustered this committee. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm not Wade Chang, so if I could just get, I did
That's
try
why
to
I
take
called
it
you
down,
Mr.
but
Viersen.
I would just like it to be either moved over or out of the, thank you, sir.
What are you doing?
Well, sir, can you, I'm not Wade Chang.
I'm a regular member of this committee.
That's,
Mr.
you, sir.
Viersen, I addressed you as Mr. Viersen.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Let's not make a mockery of the proceeding. You have the floor, please.
I'm not making a mockery.
You
I'm
are.
just noting.
Please go ahead.
I'm just noting that my name is not in front of me and it says Mr. Wade Chang.
That's your business.
That is not my name. And so when it shows.
We've established that now.
Yeah.
You've known
But I
that
would-
for your whole life. We now all know that, and so does everybody watching the committee now. So if you want to address the amendment at hand, do so. Otherwise, I'll move to the next speaker.
Chair, is this another matter of
Otherwise,
privilege? Could you take this under advisement as well?
May not have been worth it.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that you know who I am and what my name is, and I'm appreciative that
There,
you
now
recognize
it's
me.
in front of you, so you'll make no mistake yourself. So
no.
go ahead. Just keep looking at it and you remind us, please move on to the amendment. Thank you.
If we're supposed to take this seriously, so are you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
trying to,
Mr. Chair,
so
with the absence
Mr.
of
Viersen,
my
please
name, with the absence of my name there, it would look like Mr. Chang was speaking to folks that don't know who Mr. Chang is or who I am, and so I was just trying to remove his name from my shot. You will notice that he is not in this shot as I am, so thank you, and that is. However,
I think the name
my
should be
name is now there. We should be good to go forward, and that was never my
Thank you,
intention.
Mr. Viersen. This is very enlightening, but please get to the point.
This was
Your
never
name, your name is there. We know your name. Everybody knows your name. Get to the point,
Mr. Chair, this was never my intention to raise this. I was merely trying to move his name out of the picture shot, and that started an argument that I was
And you
not.
did it in a very rude manner.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I was a witness to it. It was
to
not
my
very
to
The
my.
person rude is Mr. Chang.
I don't know. No, I had a plan of where to begin, and this is not it, and so I don't know where to begin now. Nonetheless, Mr. Chair, I would like to address the amendment brought forward by Mr. Andrew Lawton. I don't know about you, Mr. Chair, but I remember, I don't remember the first time meeting Mr. Lawton, but I do remember listening to Mr. Lawton on a podcast for a lot of time. And so now, even today, when I hear his voice, I think I'm still listening to a podcast, and oftentimes I'm listening to him through one of these earpieces, so it gets me a little discombobulated. But I'm really excited that he is our new colleague here in Parliament, and so I welcome him here. Now, I remember one of the first conversations I had with Mr. Lawton when he got here, and it's always fascinating to me to ask new members of Parliament what they did before and like what motivated them to come onto the field, so to speak. And he said to me, well, defending freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion have been major motivators for him. And I took that for what it was, and I appreciated that, as these are things that I care about as well. And I reflected upon what had motivated me to get involved in the defense of the province of Alberta, the defense of firearm owners, the defense of the Christian faith, were all things that had motivated me. And yet, often you do not get to tangibly capture those things. And so tonight we're debating an amendment by Andrew Lawton, which does precisely the thing that he came here, what he told me he came here to do, was to defend freedom of expression and freedom of religion. It is not often, Mr. Chair, that you get to come to Parliament and do, in as many words, exactly the thing that you came here to do. Now, the fact is that Mr. Lawton made this decision to become a member of Parliament and to pursue that probably many years ago, like probably at least 2 years ago. And Mr. Lawton knew that this was a threat. He knew this was a threat more than 5 minutes ago, more than whenever he got to draft this amendment. He knew that this was a threat, and that's what motivated him to run. And so I guess that speaks a little bit to the trajectory that the Liberal government has put this country on. That speaks to when we open our eyes and look around us, see what's happening to our country. Mr. Speaker, I sit on the Veterans Affairs Committee, and we've been dealing with veterans' mental health and the things that drive them to take extreme action. And one of the things that they say is that they don't know what they fought for. They don't know why. They don't recognize the country that they come back to. And I think that's what Mr. Lawton was motivated by as well, is that to build a country that's worth defending, to build a country that I don't know where his grandparents came from, but my grandparents moved here from the Netherlands after being liberated by the Canadians, and they moved to a country that was going to defend freedom, that was going to defend freedom of religion, and that was a motivator for many people. And so I appreciate that Mr. Lawton put his name forward to run for our party. As I think we have been the defenders of freedom of religion. I remember when I first got here, Mr. Speaker, one of the first things the Liberal government did was shut down the Office for Religious Freedom. It had a special ambassador dedicated to the defense of freedom of religion. One of the first things the Liberal government did. Now, the Liberal government has not been known to be a spendthrift government. They have been known to run deficits for as long as I've been around here. They said they were going to be modest deficits. That has definitely not been the case. But they did not seem to have fiscal responsibility in their repertoire. But nonetheless, the thing they had to cut right off the get-go was the Office for Religious Freedom. And so perhaps that was one of the tipping point, the thing that Mr. Lawton noticed as the religious freedom of expression is under attack. We've seen multiple things coming through through the Liberal government, through the courts, and the Liberal government failing to defend it when it comes to religious freedom. We've seen prolonged attacks upon religious organizations with the summer jobs attestation. And again, in that situation, the Liberals deny and say that's not what's actually happening. And then when it eventually comes out that no, that is indeed what's happening, then they back down, pay millions of dollars out to organizations who had sued the government. And then you'd think that would have taught the government a lesson around that with the kind of summer jobs. But no, the next year they take a run at it again with a separate form, a checkbox, and on the Canada Summer Jobs initiative. Now, it seems that they've backed down on that, but then at the Finance Committee, they brought forward two recommendations from the Finance Committee to revoke charitable organizations of their charitable, or religious organizations of their charitable status. And so those are just the very tangible things. But I think Canadians from across the country have felt the push from this government to relegate religious practice, religious thought, to inside of buildings, inside of places of worship. And now they seem to be concerned about what even goes on inside those places. I do recall, Mr. Speaker, it was a tradition in the past that the police wouldn't enter places of worship. And then we've seen during the pandemic that police were ready to enter places of worship. So the state encroachment on places of religion, freedom of religion, I think it is with good reason that Mr. Lawton told me that when he first got elected that he was motivated to protect these things. And so I am happy to support the amendment from my colleague, and I look forward to the time when we'll be able to vote on this as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Veerson. Mr. Gill.
I'll go to the bottom of the list and cede my time for other fellow members who want to speak.
Okay, that takes us to Mr. Giovanni then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I speak, of course, in favor of Mr. Lawton's amendment. You know, tomorrow morning there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of churches across our country that open their doors to feed their neighbors. There will be hundreds, if not thousands, of churches across our country who open their doors to offer counseling to heartbroken couples at risk of separating. There will be hundreds of thousands of churches that open their doors to help people overcome addiction and a whole host of other challenges. And the message these churches should be receiving from their government is respect, encouragement, and gratitude for the services they provide for struggling people and for people who need hope. And instead, what they are getting from their government is ridicule, disrespect, and outright attacks on their foundational beliefs, the very beliefs that motivate them to be good citizens and good neighbors, good fathers, good mothers. It's kind of a crazy situation we find ourselves in to even be having this conversation. And in the process of disrespecting these very important Canadian institutions, we have seen hypocrisy exposed on the part of two political parties in this room. On the part of the Bloc Québécois, we see a political party who says they are very concerned about the overreach of the federal government, and yet comes here to Ottawa begging for that federal government to have more power over the people who send them here. Shamefully. Yeah. On you. You are a hypocrite.
Oh.
On the part of the...
All right, Mr. Giovanni, I know you just arrived an hour ago. We had a discussion, a thorough discussion earlier on about language and decorum.
Oh.
And people from all sides agreed not to make making accusations and using language like that.
Oh,
So
I wasn't here to make that agreement.
Well, okay, but nonetheless, you said it, and it's inappropriate, so I'm going to ask you to apologize.
Oh,
to
that's
Mr.
not going to
Fortin.
happen.
All right, well, then we'll move on to the next speaker.
Mr.
Lawrence, you have the floor.
Point of order, Chair.
No, what's your point of order? What's your point of order?
It's a point of order, Chair. Chair, first of all, there is no precedent for calling the specific language that Mr. Giovanni used unparliamentary. Members are welcome to disagree with it, but the whole discussion in this bill, I think, is about the fact that speech you might disagree with is not necessarily speech that should be made illegal.
Yeah, Mr. Janice, you're now getting to debate. You've made your point of order.
I'm debating the matter of order.
No, you've made your point of order. You're now in a debate. I'm going to stop you from speaking now. Mr. Giovanni called a member of parliament a hypocrite. He did not, and I'm moving on to the next speaker, which is Mr. Lawrence.
I was also going to call the Liberal Party a party of colonizers and imperialists, so just to add that
to the
to.
speakers list later on. It's
Sure,
late in
please
the
add me
evening.
to the
We're not
list.
going to tolerate that type of behavior. Mr. Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Happy to say that again.
Point of order.
Fine, you can challenge my ruling. That's your right. Chair?
There is a standing order that allows us to be appealed directly to the Speaker if you deprive him of the floor. You probably don't know that, but it was adopted as part of a provision that Bardish Chagger brought forward.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jennis.
You're welcome.
Be sustained. Madame Latanzio. In favor. Mr. Chang.
Yes.
Madame Dillon. Mr. Housefather.
Oui.
Mr. Jackson.
No.
Mr. Brock.
No.
Mr. Gill.
No.
Mr. Lawton.
No.
Monsieur Fortin.
Oui. Hey, come on, Jim. Okay.
Your decision is sustained.
All right, Mr. Lawrence, you have the floor. All right. Mr. Lawrence, please.
I wish to confirm Mr. Giovanni's comment that the Bloc are hypocrites.
All right,
time.
we'll move on. We can do this all night if you want.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Holman, yeah.
Point of order.
Ms. Lansom, yeah.
Mr. Chair, is there a list of words that you can provide the committee that you're not okay with?
If you're going to sit here and call another member of parliament a hypocrite, then yes.
I
we
believe
can
that
keep
he
doing
called
this all
the,
over.
he did not
did.
call
Anyway.
another member of parliament
I've
a
ruled on it
hypocrite.
once. I've ruled on it a second time.
This is not the same thing.
We can,
Mr.
well, what's
Chair.
your point of order then?
My point of order is whether there is a list of acceptable words in this committee. Is that where we're at now?
It's not an exhaustive list, so, all right.
What
Thank you.
is the list? Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Holman, you have the
No,
floor.
point of order. It's the same incident, but it's a different point of order.
Okay, let's hear it.
You ruled on Mr. Giovanni's comment. We
Yeah.
challenged your decision and moved on. The comment made by Mr. Lawrence was not impugning an individual member. He made a general comment about a party. There is no precedent at all that I'm aware of and no standing order that prohibits that. And it is certainly not the same as what you ruled on in the previous member's intervention.
Okay.
We are free in this House and in this committee to make a range of comments
Okay,
about parties
you've
broadly,
you've
which are
made
not
your
about
point,
people.
Mr. Lawton, that's no longer a point of order. We're getting into debate.
It is a point of order.
Mr. Holman, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I was really enjoying the speech that Mr. Giovanni was saying. I was wondering, may I yield my time to allow the gentleman to continue with his speech?
No, we'll continue with the speakers list if you want, though, if you don't want to speak.
Get back on it, Jamil.
Okay.
Monsieur le Président, point d'ordre.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
Go ahead, Mr. Fortin.
Mr. Speaker, I did not hear my colleague, Mr. Giovanni, apologize, and I didn't hear him withdraw his remarks. So I would call for him to withdraw his remarks and for him to apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Fortin, and that's exactly why I took his time away and moved to the next speaker. He refused to apologize, so that's why I moved on.
Speak louder.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He refused to apologize.
Yeah.
He refused to retract his comment, and which is why I moved on to the next speaker.
This is, okay. Okay.
Okay, we're back to Mr. Jennis.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if I'd be allowed to read a scriptural text that calls someone a hypocrite, or if that would be also deemed unparliamentary and illegal under the relevant legislation. But I actually wonder, since I think Mr. Giovanni is coming up on the list again, that I'll ask you to re-add me to the bottom of the list and strike my position for now.
Put it this way, Mr. Giovanni is not going to speak again until he retracts those comments.
Okay. Well, Chair, then I would like to raise a question of privilege, because it is not merely a matter of order, but it is a matter of privilege that members be able to speak before committee. It is clearly not. And I know, look, you're relatively new in your position, but your authority as chair is not in right of you as an individual. It comes from the rules. it is a reflection of the office that you hold. And there have been multiple occasions today when you have not respected established rules. And, it is an established principle that members have a right to speak. And if you deprive members arbitrarily of the right to speak, if you end their time, deprive them of the floor, these are matters that are appealable directly to the Speaker of the House. I regrettably can't remember the specific standing order, but someone will tell me in due course, and I know it's in there, that when, uniquely in the case where a member is cut off in speaking, that members can appeal directly to the House, to the Speaker, who can overturn the judgments of the chair and nullify all subsequent proceedings. In any event, this is a matter of privilege. Mr. Giovanni is a duly elected member of Parliament. You're welcome to disagree with him. Mr. Fortin is welcome to disagree with him. But he has a right to speak. There are plenty of instances where members, I can think of where Mr. Erskine Smith dropped a few F-bombs at a committee in the last Parliament, and he was encouraged to be more appropriate in his language, but he was not deprived of his rights as a member of Parliament. You cannot simply decide to deprive someone of their right to speak because you don't like what they said. That is a violation of their privileges. So I would encourage you to consider whether this is a matter touching on privilege, and if you find that it is, I will be prepared to move the appropriate motion.
Well, Mr. Janis, let's do it this way. I've been in this position of chair at this committee for a week now. I've served as a committee chair for over 6 years. I notice you've never sat in a position as a committee chair. There's a reason for that, I suspect. Nonetheless, I think that in the circumstances, suggesting that I've been denied anybody an opportunity to speak is verging on laughable, considering we've been here for 7 hours listening to people speak over and over again. This might be your 10th or 11th intervention. I've lost track. So it's an accusation with no merit. Having said all that, I think what is the best course of action right now, our resources end in a few moments. I'm going to suspend this meeting for the day.
Chair, I've raised a question of privilege. You got to rule on the question of privilege.
Meeting suspended.